What kind of person sabotages an entire farm's power grid just to prove a point? Karen Mitchell, that's who. On a sweltering August evening in rural Kentucky, the kind of evening where the air hums with cicadas and the horizon glows gold, Karen stormed onto the Willow Creek farm like a tornado with a vendetta. Her face, flushed and twisted with righteous indignation, was the last thing the farm's owners, Tom and Eliza Harper, expected to see. They were simple folk, running a small organic operation that supplied half the county with fresh produce. Their lives revolved around the rhythm of the land planting, harvesting, surviving. But Karen, she wasn't here to buy tomatoes. She was here to burn their world down. It started with a fence. A stupid, weathered wooden fence that marked the boundary between the Harper's farm and the county road. Karen, who lived in a shiny new McMansion a mile away, had decided that fence was an eyesore. She'd been complaining for months, firing off emails to the county, posting rants on the local Facebook group, even showing up at town hall meetings to demand its removal. "It's a blight on the community," she'd shriek, her voice carrying the kind of entitled venom that made people wince. The Harpers, patient to a fault, explained that the fence was on their property, built decades ago by Tom's grandfather. It wasn't going anywhere. But Karen didn't take no for an answer. She never did. That evening, she'd shown up with a pair of bolt cutters and a mission. The Harpers were in the barn, troubleshooting a glitch in their irrigation system, when they heard the unmistakable snap of metal. Tom, a wiry man with calloused hands and a quiet demeanor, stepped outside first. There she was, Karen, sweating through her designer blouse, hacking at the farm's electrical line that ran along the fence. "What the hell are you doing?" Tom shouted, his voice cracking with disbelief. Karen didn't even flinch. "This is for the greater good," she snapped, her jowls quivering as she yanked at the wires. Sparks flew, and the hum of the farm's power grid system that kept their refrigeration units, irrigation pumps, and packing shed running went silent. The farm went dark. Eliza, Tom's wife, ran out, her boots kicking up dust. "Karen, you're destroying our livelihood," she screamed. Karen turned, her eyes gleaming with smug satisfaction. "You should have listened when I told you to tear down that ugly fence," she said, tossing the bolt cutters into the grass like a mic drop. The Harpers stood frozen, watching their life's work grind to a halt. The refrigeration units, holding thousands of dollars worth of produce, began to warm. The irrigation system, critical for their late summer crops, was dead. And Karen? She just walked back to her SUV, leaving chaos in her wake. The Harpers weren't the type to let things slide, but they weren't fighters either. They called the sheriff, who arrived an hour later, his cruiser's lights painting the fields red and blue. Deputy Ramirez, a no-nonsense man who'd dealt with Karen's antics before, surveyed the damage. The power grid was fried wires severed, control box sparking, and the main transformer smoking like a barbecue gone wrong. "This is felony-level vandalism," he said, scribbling in his notepad. "She's in deep trouble." Tom's hands shook as he explained how the outage would cost them days, maybe weeks of production. Eliza's eyes welled up, but she held it together. They'd built this farm from nothing, and now one woman's tantrum threatened to unravel it all. By the next morning, word had spread. Neighbors showed up with flashlights and offers to help, but the damage was done. The Harpers' biggest client, a local grocery chain, canceled their order when they couldn't deliver. The bank called about a late loan payment, and the repair estimate for the grid came in at $12,000 money they didn't have. Karen, meanwhile, was posting on social media, claiming she'd liberated the community from an unsafe eyesore. The audacity made Tom's blood boil. Eliza, though, was already thinking bigger. "We're not just fixing this," she said, her voice steady. "We're taking her down." They called their lawyer, Sarah Gwynn, a sharp woman who'd grown up on a farm herself. Sarah didn't mince words. "Karen's looking at criminal charges: vandalism, destruction of property, maybe even reckless endangerment. And we're filing a civil suit for damages." The Harpers nodded, their resolve hardening. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that Karen had a secret. A twist that would make this fight uglier than they could have imagined. As Sarah dug into Karen's history, she uncovered something chilling. Karen wasn't just a busybody with too much time on her hands. She'd been quietly buying up land around the county, including a plot adjacent to the Harpers' farm. Her plan? To force the Harpers out, subdivide their land, and sell it to a developer for a strip mall. The fence wasn't just an eyesore to her, it was an obstacle to her payday. Sarah found emails between Karen and a shady real estate agent, discussing how to pressure the Harpers into selling. The power grid sabotage wasn't a tantrum. It was calculated. The revelation hit the Harpers like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just about a fence or a power outage. Karen was playing a long game and they were pawns. Tom felt a rage he hadn't known he was capable of. Eliza, though, channeled it differently. "She thinks she can break us," she said, her voice low and fierce. "She's about to learn who she's messing with." They weren't just fighting for their farm anymore, they were fighting for their home, their legacy, and every small farmer who'd ever been bullied by someone like Karen. The community rallied behind them. Neighbors brought food, helped clear debris, and spread the word about Karen's scheme. A local reporter, Jake, caught wind of the story and started digging. His article, "Kentucky Farm Crippled by Neighbor's Vendetta," went viral online, painting Karen as the villain she was. Comments poured in, calling her everything from entitled to a walking lawsuit. Karen, undeterred, doubled down. She showed up at the farm again, this time with a smug grin and a cease and desist letter, claiming the Harpers were defaming her. The nerve of it made Eliza laugh, a sharp, bitter sound. "She's not getting away with this," she told Tom, and she meant it. The showdown came at the county courthouse, a squat brick building that hadn't seen this much drama since a land dispute in the 80s. The Harpers arrived early, dressed in their Sunday best. Though Tom's tie felt like a noose, Karen strutted in, her heels clicking on the tile, her face a mask of arrogance. She'd hired a slick lawyer from Louisville, a man who looked like he charged by the syllable. The hearing was for a preliminary injunction to stop Karen from interfering with the farm while the criminal and civil cases were built. But the real battle was in the air, the tension between a community fed up with Karen's tyranny and a woman who thought she was untouchable. Sarah Nguyen stood tall, her briefcase stuffed with evidence. She presented the emails, the land records, and photos of the sabotaged power grid. The judge, a grizzled man named Whitaker, leaned forward, his glasses slipping down his nose. "Ms. Mitchell," he said, his voice like gravel. "Do you understand the severity of these allegations?" Karen rolled her eyes, actually rolled them, and said, "This is all a misunderstanding. I was protecting the community." The courtroom gasped. Tom gripped Eliza's hand so hard his knuckles turned white. Then came the twist that no one saw coming. Jake, the reporter, had been poking around Karen's real estate dealings and found a bombshell. The developer she was working with had ties to a company under investigation for environmental violations. Their plan for the strip mall included cutting corners on waste disposal, potentially poisoning the groundwater that fed half the county's farms, including Willow Creek. Jake slipped his findings to Sarah just before the hearing, and she dropped them like a grenade. "Your Honor," she said, holding up a stack of documents, "Ms. Mitchell isn't just a vandal. She's colluding with a company that could destroy this community's water supply." The courtroom erupted. Karen's lawyer stammered, caught off guard. Karen herself went pale, her smug facade cracking. The judge banged his gavel, demanding order. "Ms. Mitchell, you will remain on this property only under strict supervision until the criminal investigation is complete," he ruled. "And I'm ordering a full review of these development plans." The Harpers exhaled, a small victory, but the war wasn't over. Karen stormed out, muttering about small-town conspiracies. But the tide was turning. Back at the farm, the Harpers worked around the clock to keep things afloat. Neighbors pitched in, bringing generators to power the refrigeration units. A crowdfunding campaign started by Jake raised enough to cover half the repair costs. But the stress was taking its toll. Tom barely slept, haunted by the thought of losing the farm his family had worked for generations. Eliza, ever the optimist, kept them grounded. "We've faced floods, droughts, and locusts," she said one night, her voice soft but fierce. "We'll survive, Karen." Karen, though, wasn't done. She started a smear campaign, posting videos online claiming the Harpers were hoarding land and endangering the community with their faulty power grid. She even tried to rally her suburban neighbors, but most saw through her. One woman, a retired teacher named Clara, showed up at the farm with a homemade pie and an apology. "Karen's been bullying people for years," she said. "We're with you." Clara's words lit a spark in Eliza. This wasn't just their fight, it was everyone's. Sarah kept building the case, uncovering more about Karen's shady deals. The developer had promised her a $50,000 payout if she could secure the Harpers' land. Karen had even forged documents to make it look like the Harpers' fence violated county codes. The evidence was damning, but Karen's lawyer was too good. He filed motions to delay the criminal trial, claiming Karen was under duress when she cut the wires. It was a stall tactic, but it worked. The Harpers' loan payments loomed, and the farm's output was still limping. One night, Tom broke down. He sat on the porch, staring at the dark fields, and admitted something he'd never said aloud. "Maybe we should sell," he whispered. Eliza's heart sank. She'd always been the strong one, but seeing Tom like this shook her. She took his hand, her voice trembling but firm. "This farm is us. It's our kids' future. We don't quit." She didn't sleep that night, instead drafting a plan to fight back harder. They'd organize a community rally, expose Karen's lies, and push the court to act. The rally happened a week later in the town square. Over 100 people showed up: farmers, shop owners, even kids holding signs that read, "Save Willow Creek." Jake live-streamed it, and the video got thousands of views. The pressure was mounting, and Karen's carefully curated image was crumbling. But she had one last card to play, and it was a dirty one. She filed a counterclaim, accusing the Harpers of harassment and emotional distress. It was laughable, but it meant more legal fees, more time, more pain. As the days dragged on, the Harpers leaned on their community. Clara organized a meal train. The local hardware store donated supplies to fix the fence. Even Deputy Ramirez stopped by with coffee and a promise. "We're building an airtight case. She's not slipping through." But the real turning point came when Sarah found a witness, a former employee of the developer who'd overheard Karen plotting to sabotage the farm. His testimony could seal her fate. The trial was a spectacle. The courtroom was packed, standing room only, with locals whispering and reporters scribbling. Karen sat at the defense table, her face a mix of defiance and desperation. Her lawyer tried to paint her as a misunderstood civic hero, but the evidence was overwhelming. Sarah presented the forged documents, the emails, the witness testimony. The former developer employee, a nervous man named Greg, took the stand and described Karen's plan in chilling detail. She'd bragged about teaching those Hicks a lesson and forcing them to sell. The jury's faces hardened. Karen's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. Then came the Harpers' turn. Tom spoke first, his voice steady despite the lump in his throat. He talked about his grandfather's hands planting the first seeds, about the nights he and Eliza stayed up praying for rain. "This farm isn't just land," he said. "It's our life." Eliza followed, her words raw and powerful. She described the fear of losing everything, the anger at Karen's entitlement, but also the hope that their community's strength gave them. The jury listened, rapt. Even the judge seemed moved. Karen took the stand last, and it was a disaster. She rambled about property values and community standards, but her lies unraveled under Sarah's cross-examination. "Did you or did you not cut the power lines?" Sarah asked, her voice like a blade. Karen stammered, then snapped, "I did what I had to." The courtroom went silent. Her own words buried her. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts: felony vandalism, destruction of property, and reckless endangerment. The judge sentenced Karen to 3 years in prison, with restitution to cover the Harpers' losses $15,000 and counting. The civil suit followed, awarding the Harpers $50,000 in damages, enough to fix the grid and keep the farm afloat. Karen's developer deal collapsed, and the county launched an investigation into her land purchases. Her McMansion went up for sale, a for sale sign stabbed into the lawn like a final insult. The farm didn't just survive, it thrived. The rally had brought in new customers, and the crowdfunding campaign covered the rest of the repairs. The Harpers planted a new field, naming it Community Acre, in honor of everyone who'd stood by them. Clara's pies became a weekly tradition, and Jake's articles turned Willow Creek into a symbol of resilience. The Harpers' kids, who'd watched their parents fight, started talking about taking over the farm one day. But the real victory wasn't the money or the land. It was the lesson. Karen thought she could bully her way to power, that her money and arrogance made her untouchable. She was wrong. The Harpers, with their calloused hands and stubborn hearts, showed what happens when good people stand up. They didn't just save their farm, they exposed a predator, protected their community, and reminded everyone that justice, though slow, is relentless. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Tom and Eliza stood by the repaired fence. The power grid hummed softly, a quiet promise of stability. Eliza leaned against Tom, her head on his shoulder. "We did it," she whispered. He nodded, a rare smile breaking through. "Yeah," he said, "and we'll keep doing it." The cicadas sang, the fields glowed, and Willow Creek Farm stood stronger than ever.